Dr. Zefka adjusted the sensors for the third time that day. The research vessel, Serenity's Light, drifted quietly through space, its crew of peaceful Cathara scientists studying distant star systems. The ship was beautiful in its own way, all curved lines and gentle lighting built by a species that valued harmony above all else. Zefka was different from most of his people. While other Kythera preferred studying peaceful phenomena like stellar formation and planetary weather patterns, he searched for signs of intelligent life. His large, dark eyes reflected the glow of his screens as he scanned radio frequencies from across the galaxy. A faint signal caught his attention. It was weak, almost lost in the background noise of space, but there was something about it that made him pause. The transmission was coming from an unexplored region near the galaxy's edge. Zefka increased the power to his receivers and tried to clean up the signal. What he heard changed everything. The voice was unlike anything in the galactic databases. It spoke in a language that seemed harsh yet melodic, with sounds that most species could not make. But the universal translator was working, slowly piecing together meaning from the strange words. This is Earth Station Alpha. Repeat, this is Earth Station Alpha calling any listening posts. We are a species called humans. Our homeworld designation is Sol 3, also known as Earth. We seek contact with other intelligent life. Zefka's hands trembled as he recorded the message. Earth. He knew that name from the Galactic Survey archives. It was listed as a Class 13 death world, a planet so hostile that most scientists believed complex life could never evolve there. The planet was marked in red warnings: extreme weather, dangerous radiation, violent geological activity, and a gravity well that would crush most galactic species. Yet someone was claiming to live there. Someone was calling themselves human. The transmission continued with more details. These humans described their world with casual mentions of things that terrified Zefka. They spoke of surviving ice ages that lasted thousands of years, earthquakes that could destroy entire continents, and storms with winds that moved faster than most spacecraft. They mentioned predators with teeth and claws, diseases that could kill millions, and natural disasters that happened so often they had names for hundreds of different types. Most shocking of all, they described these things as normal parts of life. Zefka was so focused on the human transmission that he almost missed the emergency alert from his homeworld. When the communication came through, his excitement about the humans was quickly replaced by fear. The message was from the Kythera High Council. The Vorthak hegemony had issued an ultimatum. The aggressive reptilian species demanded that the Kythera surrender their homeworld and submit to slavery within 30 standard days. The Vorthak had already conquered 12 peaceful systems in the past year, and their massive war fleets were moving toward Kythera space. Zefka felt his heart sink. The Kythera had no weapons, no armies, no way to fight back. Their species had evolved on a gentle world with few predators and abundant resources. They had never needed to learn violence. Their technology was advanced, but it was designed for research and exploration, not war. He thought about his people back home. 3 billion gentle souls who spent their days creating art, studying science, and raising their children in peace. They would all be enslaved or killed when the Vorthak arrived. The major galactic powers would not help. The Draknari Empire was too busy with their own territorial disputes. The Galactic Confederation was drowning in bureaucracy and would spend months debating whether to act. By then, it would be too late. But as Zefka stared at his screens, an impossible idea began to form. He pulled up the galactic databases and searched for everything known about Earth and its inhabitants. Most of the information was theoretical, based on long-range scans and analysis of the planet's hostile environment. The few xenobiologists who had studied Earth agreed that any life forms that evolved there would need to be incredibly tough and adaptable. More importantly, any species that could survive on such a dangerous world would likely know something about violence and warfare. They would have to fight their own planet every day just to stay alive. Zefka made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. He composed a message using the same frequency the humans had been broadcasting on. His translation software worked to convert his words into the harsh sounds of human language. He took a deep breath and began recording. To the species called humanity, this is Dr. Zefka of the Kythera people. We have received your transmissions from the world you call Earth. We know your planet is classified as a death world, and that your species has survived conditions that would destroy most life forms. He paused, thinking about how to explain their situation to beings he had never met, from a world he could barely imagine. Our people face extinction. A hostile species called the Vorthak hegemony has conquered many peaceful worlds. They enslave entire populations and force them to serve their war machine. Our homeworld is next. We have 3 billion people and no way to defend ourselves. Zefka's voice grew stronger as he continued. The major galactic powers will not help us. They consider our system unimportant. We are alone except for this transmission. We have heard whispers in the galactic communication networks about humans. Some say your species knows war. Some say you are dangerous in ways others cannot understand. He thought about his younger sister back home, about the children in the Kythra schools, about all the peaceful lives that would be destroyed. We do not know if you will receive this message. We do not know if you will care about strangers from across the galaxy, but we are desperate and you are our only hope. If your species truly knows how to fight, if you have weapons and warriors, please consider helping us. The message felt inadequate, but Zefka added the coordinates of the Kythera homeworld and everything they knew about Vorthak military capabilities. He included data about their own technology, hoping it might be useful to these mysterious humans. We can offer you our advanced sensor technology and scientific knowledge in exchange for your aid. We understand this is much to ask from a species we have never met, but we have nowhere else to turn. Zefka ended the transmission and sent it toward the coordinates the human message had originated from. The signal would take weeks to reach Earth if it reached there at all. Even if the humans received it, there was no guarantee they would care about the fate of aliens they had never met. But as he sat in the quiet of his research vessel, Zefka felt something he had not experienced in days: hope. There was something in that human transmission, something in the casual way they described surviving on their dangerous world, that suggested they might be exactly what the galaxy needed. He did not know that his message would spark the greatest military response in galactic history. He did not know that the humans were already aware of the Vorthak threat and had been preparing for something like this. Most importantly, he did not know that when humans received a distress call from peaceful aliens facing extinction, they would respond with every weapon they had. The message traveled through the darkness of space, carrying with it the hopes of 3 billion Kythera and the promise of a first contact that would change everything. Behind him, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that war was coming to their quiet corner of the galaxy. Captain Elena Vasquez was reviewing mining reports when the emergency alert came through. She was aboard the Defiance, a colony ship that had been exploring the outer rim systems for the past 6 months. The ship was not beautiful like the vessels other species built. It was functional, built like everything humans made, tough, reliable, and ready for anything the universe might throw at it. The alert came from Earth Central Command, marked with the highest priority codes. Elena had seen those codes only twice before, both times when human colonies were under attack. She quickly opened the transmission and listened to a voice speaking broken English with sounds no human throat could make. The alien introduced himself as Dr. Zefka of the Kythera people. Elena found herself leaning forward as the creature described a species facing extinction at the hands of something called the Vorthak hegemony. The alien spoke about peaceful worlds being conquered, billions of lives at stake, and a desperate plea for help from anyone who might know how to fight. What struck Elena most was the alien's obvious fear, not just of his enemies but of the humans he was calling for help. Dr. Zefka spoke about Earth like it was some mythical hell world, calling humans dangerous and violent in ways others could not understand. The poor creature clearly thought he was asking demons for help against monsters. Elena almost smiled at that. If only he knew how normal humans really were. She immediately forwarded the message to Earth and every human military installation in the sector. The response was faster than she had ever seen before. Within 6 hours, Admiral Marcus Chen himself was on the communication channels, coordinating what would become the largest human military operation since the Titan mining wars. Admiral Chen was a veteran of humanity's expansion into space. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belts, survived reactor failures in deep space, and led the defense of the Europa colonies against corporate raiders. He was also one of the few humans who truly understood what their species represented in the larger galaxy. All human vessels, This is Admiral Chen with emergency deployment orders. His voice came through clearly on all military frequencies. We have received a distress call from an alien species facing genocide. The hostile force is called the Vorthak Hegemony, and they have been conquering peaceful systems throughout this sector. Elena listened as the Admiral laid out the situation. The Cathara were completely peaceful, with no military capabilities. The Vorthak were a typical galactic military power, using massive ships and traditional warfare tactics. Intelligence suggested they had over 200 vessels in the attack fleet. I know what you're thinking, Admiral Chen continued. 200 ships against whatever we can put together sounds like bad odds. But remember who we are and where we come from. These aliens have never faced an enemy like us. The Admiral was right about that. Humans had learned warfare on a planet that tried to kill everything on it. They built their ships to survive in environments that would destroy other vessels. Most importantly, they thought about combat in ways that would never occur to species that evolved on peaceful worlds. Elena watched as the human response took shape. It was not like the massive battle fleets other species built. Instead, it was a collection of ships that had been designed for survival in hostile environments. Mining vessels that could operate inside asteroid fields, transport ships built to handle the radiation around gas giants, construction platforms that could work in the vacuum of space. The Dreadnought. Terra's Fury was the flagship, a converted asteroid mining platform that had been retrofitted with weapons and armor. It looked nothing like the sleek warships of galactic navies. Instead, it was a massive, ugly block of metal and machinery that could crack apart asteroids or enemy vessels with equal ease. Elena's own ship, the Defiance, was assigned to the Fast Attack Squadron. Her vessel had originally been built for deep space exploration, designed to operate for months without resupply in hostile environments. The weapons had been added later, but the ship's real strength was its ability to go anywhere and survive anything. The human fleet that assembled over the next week was eclectic and dangerous. There were 47 ships in total, ranging from massive converted mining platforms to small fast attack vessels. Every ship carried humans who had never known a world without danger. The crews were just as diverse as their ships. There were void-born miners who had spent their entire lives working in the deadly environment around Jupiter. Construction workers who built orbital platforms in radiation storms. Soldiers who had trained in environments that would kill most galactic species in minutes. What united them all was a simple understanding. When someone called for help, humans answered. Admiral Chen held a final briefing before the fleet departed. The main screen showed everything they knew about the Vorthak hegemony. The enemy ships were large and powerful, designed for traditional space combat. Their tactics followed established galactic warfare protocols that had been developed over thousands of years. The Vorthak think they know what war looks like, Admiral Chen said to his assembled captains. They expect enemies to fight fair, to follow rules, to engage in civilized combat between military forces. They have no idea what's coming. Elena understood what he meant. Human warfare had been shaped by a planet where fair fights got you killed. Humans had learned to use every advantage, accept terrible risks, and turn hostile environments into weapons. They fought like the universe was actively trying to destroy them, because for most of human history it had been. The intelligence reports about the Vorthak were revealing. Intercepted communication showed that their military commanders were dismissive of any human intervention. War Prime Gask, the Vorthak fleet commander, had apparently ordered only a token, forced to deal with Deathworld primitives if they interfered. That was their first mistake. Elena checked her ship's systems one final time as the fleet prepared to jump to the Kithra system. Her weapons were loaded, her crew was ready, and her ship was prepared for the kind of fighting that had made humans the most feared species in known space, even if most aliens didn't know it yet. The Defiance had been designed to explore hostile star systems and survive encounters with unknown dangers. Now it would help show the galaxy what happened when humans went to war. As the fleet prepared to enter hyperspace, Elena thought about the alien who had sent that desperate message. Dr. Zefka had been afraid of asking humans for help, worried about what kind of monsters he might be unleashing. Soon he would learn that sometimes the most dangerous ally was exactly what you needed. The human fleet jumped toward the Cathara system, carrying with them weapons and tactics forged in Earth's crucible of natural disasters. Hostile environments and the constant struggle for survival. They were going to war, and they were bringing everything they had learned from living on a world that wanted them dead. The Vorthak had no idea what was coming for them. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Cathara system to find a scene of impending disaster. The Vorthak blockade was already in position around the alien homeworld, their massive ships arranged in the traditional formations that galactic militaries had used for thousands of years. Admiral Chen studied the tactical display from the bridge of the Terra's Fury. 200 Vorthak vessels surrounded the peaceful planet below, their weapons aimed at population centers. The enemy ships were impressive by galactic standards, sleek, powerful, and built for conventional space warfare. They were also completely predictable. Status report. Admiral Chen called to his communications officer. Sir, we're receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface. The aliens are trying to contact us on several frequencies. They seem excited, sir. Chen almost smiled at that. The poor creatures probably couldn't believe that someone had actually answered their distress call. He opened a channel to the surface, preparing for humanity's first official contact with an alien species. The face that appeared on his screen was unlike anything in human experience, yet somehow familiar. Dr. Zefka had large, dark eyes that seemed to hold intelligence and kindness in equal measure. His skin was pale blue, and his features were delicate in a way that suggested his species had never needed to evolve for violence. Admiral Chen, Dr. Zefka's voice came through the universal translator, filled with amazement and terror. You came. You actually came. Dr. Zefka, I presume, Chen replied calmly. We received your message. How long do we have before the Vorthak attack? Hours, maybe less. War Prime Gask has been broadcasting ultimatums to surrender. But Admiral, I must warn you, there are 200 enemy ships. Your fleet is much smaller. Chen looked at the tactical display again. The Vorthak formation was textbook galactic warfare. Heavy ships providing fire support while smaller vessels maintained patrol patterns. It was the kind of setup that worked well against other conventional fleets. Doctor, we need to establish a meeting point. My people need to coordinate with yours before we engage the enemy. What followed was a comedy of errors that nearly derailed the entire operation. Dr. Zefka suggested meeting aboard one of the Kithara orbital stations, but when human Marines attempted to board, the environmental systems nearly killed the aliens. The temperature that humans considered comfortable was freezing to the Kithara. The air pressure that humans breathed easily was too thin for the aliens to survive. Finally, they settled on meeting in the cargo bay of the Defiance. Captain Vasquez had her crew modify the environmental controls to create a small habitable zone for the aliens, but the meeting was still difficult. Dr. Zefka arrived with a delegation of Kithara officials, all wearing environmental suits that made them look like children playing dress-up in adult clothing. Elena watched as they struggled with the ship's gravity, which was only slightly higher than Earth normal, but seemed to be a significant burden for the aliens. Your ships, Dr. Zefka said, looking around the cargo bay with obvious nervousness. They are so harsh and cold, and the radiation levels? Elena realized that her ship's normal operating environment would be considered hostile by most galactic species. The cargo bay they were meeting in was unheated, low pressure, and had radiation levels that would be dangerous to most aliens after prolonged exposure. To humans, it was just a workspace. Doctor, we need to understand Vorthak tactics, Elena said, trying to focus the conversation. How do they usually conduct their attacks? The briefing that followed revealed everything Admiral Chen needed to know about galactic warfare. The Vorthak followed established protocols, long-range bombardment, organized formation flying, and rules of engagement that had been developed over millennia of civilized warfare. They expected their enemies to do the same. Dr. Zefka was clearly struggling to understand human military thinking. When Admiral Chen spoke casually about acceptable losses and expendable assets, the alien looked horrified. When human officers discussed using environmental hazards as weapons, the peaceful Kithara seemed unable to comprehend the concepts. You speak of your own ships and crews as if they are tools to be used and discarded, Dr. Zefka said, his voice filled with confusion. Do you not value life? Elena exchanged a look with Admiral Chen. How could they explain that humans valued life so much that they were willing to sacrifice their own to protect others? How could they make these peaceful creatures understand that sometimes survival required accepting terrible costs? Doctor, Admiral Chen said gently, we value life more than you know. That's why we're here. The meeting was interrupted by an incoming transmission from the Vorthak fleet. War Prime Gask's image appeared on the main screen, showing a large reptilian face with cold, intelligent eyes. His species looked like they had evolved from predators with sharp teeth and scales that suggested natural armor. Unknown vessels. Gask's voice was filled with casual arrogance. You are interfering with illegal conquest under hegemony law. Identify yourselves and withdraw immediately or face destruction. Admiral Chen stepped forward to respond. War Prime Gask, this is Admiral Marcus Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. You have 1 hour to withdraw from this system. After that, we make no guarantees for your survival. Gask's response was exactly what Chen had expected. The alien commander laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Terran, I am not familiar with this species. You have 47 primitive vessels against my fleet of 200. Perhaps your translation systems are malfunctioning. No malfunction, Chen replied calmly. 1 hour, the transmission ended, and Chen turned back to the bewildered Kithara delegation. Dr. Zefka was staring at him with a mixture of admiration and terror. Admiral, they have vastly superior numbers. Their ships are larger and more heavily armed. How can you possibly— Doctor, Chen interrupted, let me ask you something. What do you know about Earth? It is a Class 2 death world, Dr. Zefka replied immediately. Extreme weather, dangerous radiation, violent geological activity. Most scientists believe complex life could never evolve there. And yet here we are, Elena said quietly. Doctor, every day on Earth humans face conditions that would kill most galactic species. We have hurricanes with winds that move faster than most spacecraft. We have earthquakes that can destroy continents. We have predators that hunt us, diseases that can kill millions, and ice ages that last thousands of years. Chen nodded. We learned warfare on a planet that was actively trying to kill us. The Vorthak think they know what combat looks like, but they've never faced an enemy that considers the impossible just another day at the office. The hour deadline approached quickly. Chen returned to his flagship while Elena prepared her ship for combat. The Kithara delegation remained aboard human vessels, partly for their own protection, and partly because they were too fascinated by their rescuers to leave. As the human fleet moved into position, Elena watched the Vorthak formation on her tactical display. They were arranging themselves for conventional space combat, heavy ships in the center, light cruisers on the flanks, following patterns that had been used successfully for thousands of years. War Prime Gask opened communications one final time. Your hour is up, primitives. Prepare to learn why the hegemony rules this sector. Admiral Chen's response was broadcast on all frequencies. All human vessels, you are cleared to engage. Remember what we're fighting for. Elena smiled as she powered up her weapons. The Vorthak were about to learn what happened when a species that evolved fighting extinction events decided to go to war. The battle for the Kithara system was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The battle began exactly as War Prime Gask expected. His massive Vorthak fleet moved into standard formation, preparing for the kind of organized, long-range engagement that had served the hegemony well for centuries. Heavy cruisers took position in the center, while lighter vessels moved to flank the smaller human force. Gask watched from his command ship as the humans initially appeared to follow conventional tactics. The enemy fleet split into 3 groups, with one group seemingly retreating toward the outer system. It looked like the primitives were finally realizing how outmatched they were. That was his second mistake. Captain Elena Vasquez led the first human group in what appeared to be a retreat. Her squadron of fast attack vessels, including the Defiance, raced toward the system's outer planets with a dozen Vorthak cruisers in pursuit. The enemy commander probably thought he was chasing down fleeing cowards. Instead, Elena was leading them into the gravity well of Kithara 7, a gas giant with radiation levels that would cook most galactic species in gravity strong enough to crush standard starship hulls. All ships, prepare for atmospheric entry, Elena broadcast to her squadron. Remember, we trained for this in Jupiter's storms. The human ships dove into the upper atmosphere of the gas giant without hesitation. Their hulls, designed for mining operations in hostile environments, handled the crushing pressure and lethal radiation as if it were just another day at the office. The pursuing Vorthak vessels followed, confident in their superior numbers. The Vorthak ships were not built for this kind of environment. Their elegant hulls began to buckle under the pressure. Their crew compartments, designed for standard atmospheric conditions, became death traps as radiation poured through their shields. Their weapon systems, calibrated for combat in open space, struggled to lock onto targets in the dense atmospheric soup. Elena's ships, meanwhile, operated normally. Human vessels were built ugly and functional, designed to work in environments that would destroy prettier ships. Her weapons had been tested in radiation storms. Her hull could withstand pressures that would implode other vessels. The first Vorthak ships began to break apart from the environmental stress. Others tried to retreat, but found their navigation systems confused by the massive gravity well. Elena's squadron picked them off one by one, using the hostile environment as their ally. Vorthak Fleet Commander, this is Captain Vasquez. Elena broadcast to the surviving enemy ships. Welcome to Deathworld combat. Meanwhile, the second human group was implementing an even more shocking tactic. Commander Sarah Torres led a squadron of converted mining vessels into the system's asteroid belt, not to take cover, but to turn the rocks into weapons. The Vorthak ships that followed them expected normal asteroid belt combat. Hiding behind rocks, using them for cover, fighting a careful game of positioning and timing. They had done this kind of fighting before. They had never seen anyone use asteroids as ammunition. Torres's ships were equipped with industrial mining equipment designed to break apart asteroids for processing, mass drivers that could accelerate chunks of rock to significant fractions of light speed, grappling systems that could move objects the size of buildings. Target selection complete, Torres announced to her squadron. Beginning bombardment. The human ships began hurling massive asteroids at the Vorthak formation. Not small rocks or debris, but kilometer-wide chunks of metal and stone accelerated to devastating speeds. The Vorthak ships found themselves dodging projectiles that hit with the force of nuclear weapons. War Prime Gask watched in growing horror as his neat battle formations were torn apart by flying mountains. His ships scattered, trying to avoid the massive rocks while still maintaining some kind of organized attack. But every time they tried to regroup, more asteroids came flying out of the belt. When Vorthak ships pursued the humans into the asteroid field itself, they discovered the true nightmare of fighting an enemy that was comfortable in hostile environments. Human ships navigated between the floating rocks as if they were flying through open space. Their crews had spent years working in similar conditions around Earth's industrial asteroid mining operations. The Vorthak ships, built for combat in clear space, struggled with the navigation challenges. Their larger vessels couldn't maneuver effectively between the asteroids. Their weapons couldn't get clear shots. Worst of all, the humans seemed to know exactly where every rock was going to be. But it was the third human group that demonstrated the most terrifying aspect of human warfare: their willingness to accept catastrophic losses to achieve victory. Admiral Chen led the main battle group directly toward the center of the Vorthak formation. War Prime Gask smiled when he saw this, thinking the enemy commander was finally engaging in proper galactic warfare. He ordered his heavy cruisers to prepare for a standard engagement. Then the first human ship rammed straight into a Vorthak dreadnought. The collision destroyed both vessels in a massive explosion that lit up space for thousands of kilometers. Gask stared at his screens in shock. No civilized species deliberately rammed their own ships into enemy vessels. It was wasteful, barbaric, and completely irrational. Except that just before impact, the human crew had evacuated to hardened survival pods that could withstand the explosion. The human ship was expendable. The crew was not. All vessels, execute ramming pattern 7. Admiral Chen's voice came across the communication channels with calm professionalism. More human ships began their attack runs, their crews evacuating to safety pods just before impact. Others deliberately overloaded their reactors, creating massive electromagnetic pulses that blinded Vorthak sensors across the battlefield. Some ships positioned themselves to create debris fields that forced enemy formations to break apart. War Prime Gask realized he was facing an enemy that fought like the universe itself was trying to kill them. Human tactics made no sense by galactic standards because they treated survival as optional, and turned every disadvantage into a weapon. When Vorthak ships tried to pursue damaged human vessels, they found themselves flying through radiation clouds that had been deliberately created by human reactor overloads. When they attempted to maintain formation, they were broken apart by debris fields that the humans had engineered from their own destroyed ships. Most terrifying of all, the humans never stopped fighting. Even when their ships were crippled, their crews continued to operate weapon systems from backup power. Even when their formations were broken, individual vessels continued attacking with whatever systems still functioned. Dr. Zefka watched the battle from the bridge of the Terra's Fury, his large eyes wide with shock and horror. The peaceful Kythera had never imagined that warfare could be so brutal and so effective at the same time. "Admiral," he said to Chen, "your people are destroying themselves to fight our enemies." Chen nodded calmly. "Doctor, we learned long ago that sometimes survival requires accepting terrible costs. Every human out there knows that we're fighting for the lives of 3 billion innocent people. That makes any sacrifice worthwhile." The tide of battle was turning decisively against the Vorthak. Their superior numbers meant nothing against an enemy that could operate in lethal environments, turn hostile conditions into weapons, and treat catastrophic losses as acceptable tactics. War Prime Gask's flagship was surrounded by the wreckage of his fleet. His neat formations had been shattered by flying asteroids. His ships had been picked apart in hostile environments they couldn't survive, and his remaining vessels were struggling to function in the chaos the humans had created. For the first time in his military career, Gask felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Not fear of death, which was acceptable to a warrior, but fear of an enemy that fought in ways his military training had never prepared him for. The humans were about to teach the galaxy what happened when a species that evolved fighting. Extinction events decided to go to war. And they were winning. War Prime Gask's flagship shuddered under the impact of another human attack. Half his fleet was gone, destroyed by tactics no military academy had ever taught him to counter. The remaining Vorthak ships were scattered, their formations broken, their crews demoralized by an enemy that seemed to treat impossible situations as routine challenges. The final blow came when human Marines assaulted his command ship directly. The attack should have been impossible. Gask's flagship was surrounded by a radiation storm that the humans had created by detonating one of their own vessels. The electromagnetic interference made targeting systems useless, and the radiation levels would kill most species in minutes. The humans came anyway. Their assault pods punched through the radiation field as if it didn't exist, their crews protected by suits designed for working in environments that would sterilize other species. They cut through his ship's hull with industrial tools that had been converted into weapons, and they fought their way to the command deck with the methodical efficiency of people who had learned warfare on a world that wanted them dead. Gask found himself facing Admiral Chen in his own command center, surrounded by the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. The human commander was surprisingly small compared to most galactic species, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he had seen things that would break stronger beings. "War Prime Gask," Chen said calmly. "You are defeated. Order your remaining ships to surrender." "I do not understand," Gask said, his voice filled with confusion rather than anger. "You had fewer ships, inferior technology, no support from the major galactic powers. How did you defeat a force 3 times your size?" Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "War Prime, you fight like someone who learned warfare in a classroom. We learned it on a planet that has been trying to kill everything on it for billions of years. You follow rules. We fight to survive." The interrogation of captured Vorthak officers revealed the true scope of the threat facing the galaxy. The hegemony controlled dozens of systems and had plans to expand their empire across the entire sector. The fleet that had attacked the Kythera was just one of many, and larger forces were already moving toward other peaceful systems. But Admiral Chen saw opportunity in the crisis. Standing on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by the wreckage of the Vorthak fleet, Chen opened a communication channel that would broadcast to every listening post in the galaxy. The message would reach the major powers, the independent systems, and every species that had ever feared the advancing hegemony. "This is Admiral Marcus Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet," his voice carried across the galaxy, on frequencies that every species monitored. "The Vorthak hegemony has been driven from the Kythera system. Their fleet has been destroyed and their war crimes have been documented." He paused, knowing that this message would change everything for humanity and the galaxy. To any species facing Vorthak aggression, the Terran Defense Fleet offers assistance. We specialize in impossible odds. We do not ask for payment, territory, or political concessions. We ask only that you defend the innocent and stand against those who would enslave peaceful worlds. The galactic response was immediate and dramatic. The Draknari Empire, the galaxy's primary military power, issued an emergency session of their war council. For centuries, they had considered themselves the dominant force in their region of space. Now they faced the reality that a previously unknown species had casually destroyed a major hegemony fleet using tactics they couldn't understand or counter. The Galactic Confederation's bureaucrats went into panic mode, issuing dozens of conflicting statements about human intervention in galactic affairs. Some called for immediate diplomatic contact. Others demanded that humanity be classified as a dangerous military threat, and still others tried to claim credit for human actions. More importantly, distress calls began pouring in from across the galaxy. Species that had been suffering under Vorthak occupation sent desperate pleas for liberation. Independent systems that feared hegemony expansion begged for protection. Even some member worlds of the major powers secretly requested human assistance against threats their own governments wouldn't address. Dr. Zeph Ka stood beside Admiral Chen on the flagship's bridge, watching as communication after communication arrived. The gentle alien who had sent that first desperate message could barely comprehend the revolution his call for help had started. "Admiral," Dr. Zeph Ka said quietly, "what have we begun?" Chen looked at the tactical displays showing human fleet positions across the sector. More ships were arriving every day as Earth mobilized its full military capability. Mining vessels were being converted to warships. Colony ships were being refitted as mobile bases. The entire human diaspora was organizing itself into the most effective military force the galaxy had ever seen. "Doctor, we've given the galaxy something it's never had before. A military force that can't be bought, intimidated, or reasoned with. When peaceful species call for help, we will answer. When tyrants threaten the innocent, we will stop them." The transformation of the Cathara system began immediately. The grateful aliens offered their advanced sensor technology and communication networks to serve as coordination points for human operations. Their peaceful research stations were retrofitted as forward bases, combining Cathara scientific expertise with human military engineering. The partnership was more effective than anyone had imagined. Cathara sensors could detect threats from incredible distances, while human ships could respond to those threats in ways no enemy expected. The combination of advanced alien technology and human tactical thinking created a force multiplier that neither species could have achieved alone. Captain Elena Vasquez found herself commanding the first mixed species squadron in galactic history. Her ship, the Defiance, now carried Cathara sensor specialists who could provide targeting data that made human weapons devastatingly accurate. In return, the aliens learned to appreciate the brutal efficiency of human military engineering. The establishment of the Deathworld Alliance sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Species that had never considered military action found themselves protected by allies who treated impossible odds as routine challenges. Pirates and raiders discovered that their victims now had friends who fought dirty and never gave up. War Prime Gask, now a prisoner aboard a human vessel, found himself being interviewed by xenobiologists who were trying to understand Vorthak military thinking. The questions revealed just how differently humans approached warfare compared to other galactic species. "You followed the established rules of engagement," the human interviewer noted. "You maintained organized formations, used conventional tactics, and expected your enemies to do the same." "Why?" Gask struggled to answer. "That is how civilized species wage war. There are protocols, traditions, accepted methods of combat that have been refined over thousands of years. And if following those protocols meant losing the war, then you accept defeat with honor." The human interviewer shook his head. "War Prime, humans don't fight for honor. We fight to win. When the survival of innocent people is at stake, there is no such thing as fighting fair." The final scene of the revolution took place in Earth's orbital shipyards, where a new class of warship was taking shape. Unlike the converted mining vessels and colony ships that had won the first battles, these were purpose-built for galactic warfare. They incorporated lessons learned from human victories and alien technology provided by grateful allies. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck, watching as the first of the new vessels neared completion. The ship was named Earth's Promise, and it represented humanity's commitment to defending the innocent across the galaxy. The vessel was larger than previous human ships, but retained the functional, ugly aesthetic that made human engineering so effective. It was built to survive in hostile environments, operate without support for extended periods, and carry enough firepower to engage entire enemy fleets. More importantly, it carried something no other galactic military possessed: the absolute certainty that when peaceful species called for help, someone would answer. Dr. Zefka joined Admiral Chen on the observation deck, his alien features filled with wonder at the sight of the massive warship. "Admiral, do you think the galaxy will be safer now?" Chen nodded, watching as the Earth's Promise prepared for its maiden voyage. The ship would carry human crews to distant systems where tyranny threatened the innocent. It would serve as a mobile base for operations that other species would consider impossible. "Doctor, the galaxy is about to learn what happens when a species that evolved fighting extinction events decides to become the guardians of peace. When tyrants threaten the innocent, when pirates raid peaceful worlds, when any force tries to destroy what others have built, they will face humanity." The ship's engines powered up, and the Earth's Promise began its journey toward the Outer Rim, where reports of hegemony activity suggested new battles awaited. Admiral Chen smiled as he watched it disappear into hyperspace. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had answered the call, and they were here to stay.